So the question is, how much muscle can you build naturally? And this enlightens us to the aspect of how much more you may be able to build with the old sneaky sauce. Sorry about that, had a backfly, landed on my rhomboids. Whilst I will give you information from my old noggin, I am also going to project information from Mr. Greg Nuckkols. Think of this as a reverse free shred, where I purposefully reference and give information from someone else as I want to project people who I think can help you with your health and fitness journeys. And Greg Nuckkols is one of them. The caveat is you have to say his name like that. I think he appreciates it. And so if more people took information from people like this, rather than people like this, my faith in humanity would be restored. I'm James Chain Amino Acid. Welcome to the Layer Cake, son.
One more thing, young man. Always remember, the art of good business is being a good middleman. Bye-bye.
If you understand my film references, such as this one, oh, this thing is amazing, can really feel the compression right here. No, that is the sound of your organs screaming in harmony. Think Dakota Fanning in War of the Worlds. Yeah, that level of screaming. Then I love you, you are my people, I am at your service. And so when we approach a question like this, there are other questions you may ask, such as, what are my goals? How much muscle do I need to build for my goals? Now, those are outside of my scope, and it really comes down to your specificity. And for the regular fitness pursuer, focusing on yourself and not comparing yourself to other people, perhaps in social media, or having some set mass number, may be beneficial for you if you are not, for example, a bodybuilder or a fitness competitor where literally amounts of mass are vital. But for the regular gym goer, fitness pursuer, my advice would be very much to focus on yourself, make the most of what you have, and ultimately consistently hammer at the underlying principles behind muscle building, and not overly worrying about a certain amount of inches, that's what she said, around your arms, for example, but just embracing the process of training and trusting the process. And so the point I wanted to make with the thumbnail is that that's not a fair comparison. And so Bruce Lee, rest in peace, his goal was not a maximal amount of muscle mass. He was a martial artist. Performance in martial arts was his goal. On the other end of the spectrum, Phil Heath is a bodybuilder, and literally his goal is to build as much mass as possible with, of course, symmetry in the other bodybuilding aspects. And when it comes to the old naughty pills, they are at different ends of the spectrum. And so while taking people at a different ends of a spectrum with different goals, different behaviors, is not directly useful as a direct comparison. For example, he has more muscle, therefore his training and eating methods must be superior. That just isn't valid. We have to understand context. We have to understand the variability
and the nuance
of issues like this. But if we do understand the context, that people have different behaviors, etc., different goals, specificity, it can give a useful perspective as to how much muscle people can build naturally or not. And so how much muscle can you build, assuming you understand the base layer principles of muscle growth, such as overload, dynamic contractions, mechanical tension, metabolic stress, protein intake, energy balance. And so this stuff is all over my channel. If it sounds like an alien language and you have no idea what any of that means, please watch some of my other videos. And so if you do understand those principles of training, how much muscle can you build? For men and women, it's very heavily genetic based. We look at factors such as muscle fiber dominance, the type 2 muscle fibers, which are born to hypertrophy, if you like. We have other factors such as your somatotype, just joking. Introducing the new somatotype spectrum by James Linker, the dry muscleomorph, the it was just a social experimentomorph, and Vincent. You have T levels, hormone function, you have limb length, you have myostatin, which is a literal wall in your body which prevents further muscle growth. And so it's very heavily genetically dependent. And it's worth noting that beginners can pack on more muscle faster, as this training will be a new stimulus for them. And this has nervous system and muscular system components as to why they can build muscle quickly. And these are very heavily interlinked concepts. And so unfortunately, the more experienced you are in the gym, the harder the old gains become. So generally speaking, you may hear that around 30 pounds of muscle is attainable naturally over your lifetime. And this could be a bit less for people on different ends of the genetic spectrum, such as 20 pounds all the way over 30 pounds, more towards the 40 pounds of muscle gain. There are genetic outliers, for example, genetic muscular freaks. If you don't know what a genetic muscular freak looks like, sometimes the answer is staring you in the face. But I don't like to give a specific generic number because this question is so variable in nature. It's really impossible to say. and it varies on a case-to-case basis. How much muscle you can build is unknown because of all the variables involved. However, in this video, I will be giving you some calculations as analyzed by Greg Nuckolls, which can get you in the ballpark. But please remember that there is no exact figure. There is no one that can tell you exactly. There are calculations that Greg Nuckolls will talk about, but he's just analyzing different models, projecting different forms of information to you. He's not giving you a set in stone answer. There is no definitive answer. There is no perfect model. So please keep that in mind, as that is the correct way to approach this question and the correct way to look at these calculations. But importantly, what these models can do is highlight the key aspects of what you should focus on with this question, which are your structure, your build, your frame, as that heavily influences the amount of potential muscle that you can pack on the old machine. And your goals, of course, matter. For example, endurance athletes would not want large amounts of muscle mass, as this can be detrimental to their performance, as carrying that extra bulk, of course, has an energy requirement to it.
Stay hard!
And so Greg Nuckolls' articles are more like essays. They take a fair bit of time to read. And so I'm going to concise 3 of these essays to you. Now, I feel comfortable concising and giving you this information because these articles are many, many years old. However, of course, I do encourage you to read his content firsthand. Visit his website, Stronger by Science, and I've referenced the articles down below in the description box. Just copy and paste them into the old Google and it will take you there. But in between rewatching episodes of Lost to try and figure out what the hell's going on, I have read these essays, and they do touch on other aspects such as strength and also the old sneaky supplements. However, I'm really focusing on the natural muscular potential aspect of his information. Natural muscular potential is influenced by the size of your frame. Based on a few simple calculations, you can get a pretty good idea of your muscular and strength potential. And so the first model that Greg analyzes is the fat-free mass index, the FFMI. Now, this can give you some sort of idea about natural potential. However, the study and this model is highly, highly limited. And I have a video on that where I explain some of these limitations. And here's what I said. Essentially, it was a study in 1995 around body composition, or if you like, a reference of how yoked you are. And so you enter your information into a formula and it gives you a number. And so people on YouTube will use this to say if you're over 25, these people are not natty. And so people who use the FFMI to accuse people of being on juicy vitamins are being as silly as the people they are accusing. That is a twist ending. These findings must be regarded as preliminary and subject to several possible methodological limitations. Yeah, that. Body fat percentage, which was a key basis of this study for the participants, was attained by looking at photographs. They eyeballed photographs to determine body fat percentage for certain participants. Natty, not natty, au naturel, unnatural. Spinach. Our calculations for the Mr. America winners are based on body fat estimates from blinded examination of several photographs of the individual. These methods are certainly prone to a degree of error. You don't say. And Greg correctly projects many of these limitations. And so whilst it can give you some kind of figure, the FFMI is in no way definitive, and it's not a model I like to use. And this is what Nuckolls has to say. You definitely have to pick the right set of parents to reach an FFMI of 25. However, it's not a hard ceiling like many people believe. And so if the fat-free mass index is an index of junk, then what is a better alternative? Well, we have the muscle to bone, that's what she said, ratio. The idea that the amount of muscle you can gain is limited by how much bone mass you have. In measurements of thousands of elite athletes from soccer to weightlifting, excuse me, but it's football, judo, rugby, and more, Holloway has found that each kilogram, 2.2 pounds of bone supports a maximum of 5 kilograms, 11 pounds of muscle. 5 to 1, then, is a general limit of the human muscle bookcase. The limit for women is closer to 4 to 1 to 1, to 1 to 1 to 1. And so as Nuckolls says, muscle and bone are intrinsically linked. They arise from the same stem cell line, they grow and strengthen in response to very similar hormonal signals in puberty, and muscle contractions strengthen bone. And so the main reason why this is perhaps more accurate than the FFMI is because it doesn't just consider height, it also considers how wide and thick someone is. And as Greg analyzes, the guy who walks into the gym and he's thick and wide has more muscular potential than the guy who's perhaps tall but doesn't have that width and that broadness to them. However, a small problem. It's very, very hard to measure, and you would need professional testing. An anthropometrist taking 22 measurements. Imagine how many takes it took me to say the word anthropometrist. And so then Greg says, maybe you think you can just do a DEXA scan, therefore. No dice. As a DEXA scan shows you the bone's dry weight, just the mineral content, and not the full mass of the bone. And so essentially, Knuckles projects that the muscle to bone, that's what she said, ratio is a very good model, but it's not very user-friendly, and it's hard to conduct. And so then we get to the last model, Casey Butts, that's what she said, maximum muscular potential model. Again, imagine how many takes it took me to say that name. And so Dr. Butt analyzed natural bodybuilders, and he found a strong relationship between people's wrist circumference, their ankle circumference, and their muscular potential. And so Greg's analysis is that this model is perhaps not as useful as the muscle to bone ratio, but it's more user friendly. It's far easier for you to perform, and therefore it is a good calculation for you to consider. And again, it takes into account your frame rather than just your height, as the FFMI does. All you need to do to get a reasonably accurate prediction of your muscular potential is measure your wrist circumference between your hand and the bony protrusions at the side of your wrist with your hand open, and your ankle circumference at its smallest point. And so the old wrist is perhaps a useful thing to consider when trying to estimate your muscle potential. Greg concludes his essays by saying, again, these are not perfect formulas. These are the best we have at this current time. So please remember that. And so, for example, you can take Casey Butt's model, you can put it into Google, and it will give you a calculator where you can put in your information and get your results, for example. And that will be easier than me getting out the old chalk and blackboard, going a bit prehistoric with the formulas. Again, just use technology and it'll be far easier for you. And so Knuckles' conclusion. Of the available models for predicting your drug-free muscular potential, muscle to bone ratio is probably the best option. But Dr. Casey Butt's calculations are based on similar principles and are much more user-friendly. So that's what we're going with for predicting muscular potential. And then he has another article which again envelops this issue and also looks at how much extra you may be able to build with the old naughty pills. I do not recommend the use of naughty pills in any way at all. This is purely informational and educational in purpose. And here are the key points of his article. You can screenshot that and read it over a romantic glass of wine. And again, here are some of the points he uses to wrap up that article. Again, screenshot that, light a candle and enjoy. And so I hope this was useful for you. Your frame is linked to the amount of muscle you can build, but no one can tell you for sure exactly how much your potential is. All you can get are ballpark figures. However, very importantly, don't suffer from paralysis by analysis. Focus on your training and your nutrition consistently over time and develop yourself rather than focusing on social media biscuits who are misleading you in many, many ways. I'm James Chain Amino Acid. This was a layer cake, son. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon. Slims your waist immediately and dramatically. Only $65. Sounds like a bargain. Plus tax. I'm out. Sorry, let me do that a little more dramatically and immediately for you.
I am out.
And so my glasses must be playing up here because I'm seeing 3 angles of the Instavirus.